Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into a way too early tier list ranking on the 2028 Republican primary. These are some of the potential contenders. I think there's a total of 13 people here. Some of these people talked about more than others. There's some that I'm sure I left off the list, but these are just 13 people I believe that probably are going to be talked about a lot when it comes to the 2028 primary. And yes, this is too early. I need to make videos. We understand this, guys. Just let me have this one. All right, let's begin. Now, you can see I've got the 5 different tiers: favorite, contenders, meh, unlikely, and then no chance. And the color scheme on this to me is always, I don't know why they do this, but you have to manually change the color scheme. But shouldn't green be at the top? I know they put red at the top every time with these tier lists. It doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe it's a younger kid thing or something, but we're going to go through this, obviously. So I'm going to start with JD Vance. JD Vance is going to be the only person in the favorite tier. Now, a lot of people are wondering, what is JD Vance's stance on the visa issue? I know that's something that people are thinking about right now. Guys, that's a issue that's happening in real time. It's going to be irrelevant. And I know with Musk, it's important, and we're going to get into that because Musk's rhetoric is a big problem, and that goes with Ramaswamy as well. But when it comes to someone like JD Vance, Vance has already come out against the H-1B visas, and we'll see what ends up happening there. But in terms of Vance, just as an overall bigger picture, he's the obvious favorite. He's the young gun. He's basically endorsed by Trump. Now, there are some variables that go into that. If Vance gets on Trump's bad side, if something happens, he's probably screwed. But right now, you would have to say, especially how he handled the debate with Waltz, the way that they tried to pin Vance as like this women hater. It didn't really work. He was able to get out of the box, and he could almost massage the MAGA movement, and people may think he's a little bit boring. That could be an argument against him, I understand it. And also, you could argue a lack of experience, limited time as a senator, really only a few years in Ohio. But I would say Vance, he's the young gun. He's endorsed by Trump. He was endorsed to the point where Trump made him his VP. He did very well on the campaign trail. Trump won by a lot. Vance gets some credit for that. So right now, Vance has got to be the favorite. And you look at the betting markets, Vance is the clear favorite. It's a cookie cutter answer, but what do you want me to say? Until something changes, Vance is the obvious favorite. All right, so now we've got Vivek. Where would I put Vivek? I don't think Vivek's going to happen, honestly. It's really not. It doesn't have anything to do with the visa situation. But when you insult American culture like that, and now he's got minions going around saying, oh, he wasn't talking about American culture. He was talking about other cultures. Yeah, it was a backhanded diss at American culture. That's what it was. But with Vivek, it's just, he's blocked by Vance already. He's already blocked by Vance. So you could maybe put him in the meh, like, oh, he might have a chance. I just don't think to me, it's hard to say there's really many contenders right now because Vance is so far and away ahead. But Vivek, and it's not just the visa thing. It's just he's like a younger guy, and it's like Vance is just the clear and obvious choice above Ramaswamy at this point. And Ramaswamy obviously has his thing with Musk and everything like that, and I'm sure that's gonna, you would think, help him, although recently it really hasn't. It's actually hurt him based on their beliefs, but he's going to get a lot of pub with the Department of Government Efficiency, and I think they are going to do some good things because there is a lot of wasteful spending, and it's an obvious thing to do. Try and cut down on that through transparency and telling the people all of the dumb stuff that the government spends money on. And really, what I think a lot of the Department of Government Efficiency is going to be merging different departments together because they have 2 different departments that do basically the same thing. They merge them together, you save money, and you get rid of some of those jobs. And so I think that's what a lot of it's going to be. But I think with Vivek right now, I would say meh. His belief with the visas, it's just not good. It's a terrible rhetoric, and so I would put him in meh. And listen, I'm not going to make this whole visa thing. We're just going to go through this. Next, it's Tucker Carlson. So Tucker is really hard to do because Tucker's come out and said he doesn't want to be president. He doesn't want to have to deal with that. And you would think it's just hard to rank him because I know MAGA loves Tucker. He went on his own. Fox News did the thing where they fired him just out of nowhere. He's like the #1 show in all of cable politics, and they fire him. You could argue that Tucker's a contender. I mean, if he wanted it, it'd be interesting. The problem is, would Tucker really run against Vance, especially if Trump supports Vance? I just don't see that as an option. So what would have to happen to Vance for Tucker? Or it's just, I would say Tucker could potentially be an option because the MAGA base really likes him, but he said he doesn't want to do it. It's just, it's unlikely based off of the dynamic structure within the Republican Party that he would usurp Vance right now, unless something happens to Vance. And then maybe Trump would have to, because you have to understand right now, Trump still, and listen, this could change. See, that's the thing with these liberal people, like, oh, it's a cult. I mean, people have come out against Vivek and Elon after praising them. And we praised them because they did help Trump win. That's great. But if you say things that we vehemently disagree with, we're not just going to say, oh, you know what? They're powerful. We need to just respect them. No, that's not how it works. So, and that goes for Trump as well. Go look at Trump back after Warp Speed in 2022 within the Republican Party. He was not popular. He had to buy some grace back with the people. So for Tucker, I mean, we'll see what happens. But to me, it's just, I think he's blocked by Vance right now. You could argue he's a contender. Like if he wanted to do it, he's got support within MAGA. We know that. Marco Rubio, I would basically say no chance. I know. See, Marco Rubio, believe it or not, I was looking at, do you approve of the Trump pick? And like for all the different things. And for Rubio, he had like a plus 12 approval rating. He was number one in terms of the approval of the pick that Trump made for the specific area. So I think Rubio is liked by most people. Obviously, there's a lot of people on the right based off of his stance on Israel that think it's a step backwards. And he's a war hawk against China as well. You could argue, the China strategy is the correct one. The Israel one, I think we can agree it's not. But that's just what the Republican Party is right now. But Rubio, to me, he had a slight chance in 2016, but I don't think so. I'd be shocked if it was. I mean, you could say maybe into the unlikely because he is part of this administration and people kind of do like him. Elise Stefanik, it's just not going to happen with her. She is part of the administration, representative from New York. There was an outside shot. It was her and Kristi Noem in terms of like being a woman for VP. If you wanted to balance the ticket for Trump, that was the 2024 VP, but maybe she'll possibly be a VP in 28, although I doubt it. Don Jr., yeah, we don't really want Don Jr., honestly, but this is something to where it's like, I mean, if Trump backs Don Jr., is it going to, listen, it just depends how does Trump's second term go? How much power does Trump have from a successful or an unsuccessful second term? And if the second term does go well and that is his son and his son wants to run for it, we know Don Jr. is the one that really, he gets out there, he's behind the scenes, everyone talks about him, he's got his show, he always talks politics, he's more involved than Eric Trump. But I would say Don Jr., to me, I don't think it'd be a good idea. I don't think people want, at this point, another Trump. Maybe Barron, people say 20 years down the line, whatever it is. But Don Jr., let's just not do that. But the problem is if Trump, that is his son. And if Trump has a good second term and he's very popular and he says, you know what, my son wants to do this, he's big into politics. We know Don Jr. always is talking politics and it seems like he does have a passion for it. That's a lot different than being president, we understand, but we would rather let's not do Don Jr., okay? You've got Donald. Yeah, well, I would say unlikely for Trump. There is a way, from what I've seen, you're not going to get an amendment changed, number one. Number two, the way that Trump potentially could do it, it's this weird thing to where Trump runs as Vance's VP under the idea that if Vance wins, he would immediately step down and Trump would take over because technically Trump cannot run for president again, but he can run for VP. It's like a vague thing. And it really does kind of violate the spirit of, I think, both the 12th and the 22nd Amendment. But there is potentially a loophole. And obviously, if Trump ran as a VP, everyone would say, well, Trump's just going to take over. And that's why he's doing it, try and get a third term. I think you could argue that this would be a lot more possible if Trump was like 71 years old, so a little bit younger. But you've got a combination of Trump really not being eligible, trying to find a loophole, being very old as it is, already having run 3 straight times as the Republican nominee. That's why it's just very unlikely it's going to happen. I know there are some people telling me they still want Trump to run again in 28. It's like, I mean, listen, Trump, if he has a really, really good term, but he's just too old. That's the other thing. So he's got multiple things going against him. So I don't think so. Josh Hawley from Missouri, I would say basically no chance. You could argue maybe an outside shot at a VP, but to me, he's just kind of irrelevant right now. Now, that's probably going to change in a few years, or it could. There's a lot of time in terms of politics the next 4 years, but I don't think so. Nikki Haley, it's no chance. Now, Haley has come out in support of MAGA, like the main MAGA base who is against the H-1B visas. It's she's a political opportunist. It's understandable, but there's just no way that rhetoric is going to fly right now in the modern MAGA Republican Party. There's just zero chance. RFK Jr. I'm not even sure he's a Republican at this point. I mean, it's just no, and I you don't want to harp on the voice with RFK Jr., but it's like it's just not going to happen. I mean, unless he like saves American health within the span of 4 years, which is not going to happen because it takes time to do this. But if there's like a marketable improvement in terms of the health, maybe you could argue an RFK gets closer to Trump and he becomes more Republican. I know I just don't see it based on how our political structure is set up right now. RFK Jr. really doesn't fit in as a Republican or obviously as a Democrat. Originally he was running as a Democrat. They kicked him out of the party. No, they said you cannot vote for RFK Jr. in the primaries. You must vote for Biden. How'd that turn out? But I just can't see RFK Jr., for a number of reasons. Ted Cruz, it's just not going to happen with Ted Cruz. I mean, you could argue Ted Cruz and Rubio are the same, but I think right now with where Cruz is with, I think he's got no shot. I mean, Cruz's chance was 2016. It is what it is. It didn't happen for him. And if they would have rallied around Cruz, maybe they would have beaten Trump in 2016, but there were too many people. Rubio stayed in too long. Kasich stayed in too long. So I would say Cruz, there's no shot. Tulsi Gabbard, Tulsi is one to where you could argue as a contender, but Vance is just it's just one of those things to where it's like, Tulsi's either going to be VP or I can't see her being the nominee. And I know people have said it's been like this running joke because liberals have ran 2 women and neither of them won. Well, now Republicans are going to get the first female president. And you would argue if it is going to be the first female president, Tulsi is probably in the best position. But Tulsi's been a Republican for what? 3 months. And you could argue that's a good thing because then you're going to get an independent vote. But it's like, do you really trust Tulsi? I don't see right now. You could argue she's at the top of the list in terms of the meh, because listen, I think as a VP with Vance that would work out. I know a lot of people wanted Vivek to be Vance's VP as well. I think if you wanted to balance the ticket better, it would be Tulsi and Vance in terms of that. And then this could also be another VP pick, Glenn Youngkin. Youngkin would probably fit in right there. Just kind of average. Youngkin to me would not really work as the candidate of the modern Republican Party. To me, he's a little bit too subdued. He's not aggressive enough. And even it seems like Vance has a little bit of a problem with that, but Vance is definitely has a different personality than Youngkin. You can just tell. Youngkin can appeal to moderates. That's why I would say right now, if I had to predict like Vance's VP, you're looking at Tulsi or you're looking at Youngkin, I would say. But I just think Vance right now has such a high control right now of being the nominee, especially with Trump's backing. It just depends. If something happens within the party, if there's a falling out, you could argue maybe Tucker rises if he even wants to do it. He might not want to do it. He's just a wild card. But he has MAGA support, and he's seen as like just a non-politician. That's another huge thing that they like within the party. These other people, I think, are probably more VP material, possibly. Don Jr. obviously would be all or nothing. But Don Jr. is just if Trump wants his son to be there and then endorses his son, it's going to be hard to beat. Unless Trump has a bad second term and doesn't do things and doesn't deport people and has a falling out with the base, and then they turn against Trump. So, and then Trump himself, it's just he's too old. So that would probably be what we're looking at right now. Tucker is really, I wouldn't call him you could argue he's a contender, more of a wild card, because we really don't know what he's going to do. It depends on how good Vance does with Trump and this administration, and it all depends on that. But Vance is definitely the heavy favorite, and there's really, I can't even see another, like you could argue who's the contender here? Vivek? I think Vivek is just blocked by Vance, and Vivek has, you don't want to get too caught into the recent stuff that's happened, but it is what it is. But either way, that's where I would put the tier list when it comes to these Republicans here. Guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.